We're live. You are live. We're
Hey,
here. Hey guys, it's
not
Wednesday. You know what time it is? Talk about another IT related topic. AB is back from India. He hopped on our live last week and didn't want to say anything, so he apologizes for that.
I do. I do apologize for that. I should have
So
said something. You're right. It was awkward. I
yes,
didn't know you were going to add me to the stream.
how do you think we felt? It was
Yeah,
very awkward.
yeah.
No, but it was a great conversation with RK. He did a great job, great job talking about ERP managed services, which I think is a much needed topic to discuss.
Merps.
Yeah, MERPs.
Yeah.
We're hashtag MERPs. What'd you do in India? Anything fun? What was your
Some,
favorite thing?
yeah, some fun stuff. I took a, went to the beach one day,
Yeah,
quick dip, but mostly for family stuff. So wasn't
nice.
an ideal trip for fun.
How was the
Just,
beach?
yeah,
Was it super hot?
yeah. It was like
Yeah,
80s. It's perfect. It's
nice,
perfect.
nice. Okay. Well, today we are talking about IT strategic planning and why that may be important for your organization to define their path to digital transformation. So, if you're joining us today, let us know you're here. Post a comment. Tell us where you're at. Tell if it's snowing or if it's summer weather where you're at. We did this last week, and it was very interesting to see who was where and what was going on. So, all right, let's get started. Let's just talk about your views on IT strategic planning. What is it? Why is it important? Why should organizations do it?
So it primarily is planning for your organization. It's a misnomer to call it IT strategic planning. I think
Mm-hmm.
it really is. How do you define your vision for the future for your organization, for your city, your county, your housing authority, your transit agency, and a lot of that depends on what technologies get used, right?
Right.
So in India, in my home state of Goa, um, they have so many digital services for citizens to interact with the government. I was blown away. Like I had no idea that you could have an app that does all of your, documents, your driver's license, your health insurances. You can apply
Wow.
for stuff online. You don't have to go into anywhere to pick up a form to then send it in the mail. This is, in a fairly underdeveloped country, and I
Mm-hmm.
think we are behind in many ways in the US, and ahead in many other ways. But it was very surprising to me. And I think the way that should have come about is someone saying, what services do we want to offer to our citizens? How should our people be doing business internally? And what kind of tool sets do our employees need? And that leads to an IT strategic plan, because when you set the vision and then you realize that you don't have the tool sets and there's several gaps in your infrastructure, then you can say, okay, we need to spend X amount of dollars over so many years, and these kind of projects need to be run. That then becomes an IT strategic plan. It really, in a nutshell, is planning for your future. And some of those future vision elements might have technology aspects to consider.
Right. And some of those visions may change, right, throughout the years. If we're
Mhm.
talking about a strategic plan, sometimes that's done, 5 to 10 years out. So, how do you help your clients manage through some of those vision changes?
Yeah, so when I first got into this industry about, I don't know, 15 years ago, we were doing 10-year IT strategic plans. Now, that is assuming technology stays the same over 10 years and they follow a
Mhm.
certain plan. That's changed now. It's we're doing 3-year plans, and we really recommend that people um, take another hard look at the plan every year to make
Mhm.
sure that you're not doing something that isn't industry standard anymore, or that the recommendations that we have made 2 years ago are still valid. And it's a really
Mhm.
important part of looking at your overall infrastructure and strategy, because technology changes really quickly today.
Yeah.
And what was recommended 2 years ago may not necessarily be true. And our clients are very savvy, and they've caught on to that fact. In fact, one of our newest clients, City of Wilsonville, Oregon, we did an IT strategic plan for them in 2016, and they 90% of those recommendations were followed. and they did all of that work, and the 10% that they didn't follow were had to do with changes, because
Hmm.
what was relevant in 2016 wasn't relevant in 2019. So they just, adjusted, or they made new priorities, and that's how they implemented those recommendations. So very commendable. It's really hard to fault them for not having followed 100% of the plan because it wasn't relevant at the time.
Right, right. That's a great example, by the
Hmm.
way. So, what are some best practices to build a case for some of these IT related investments, such as a strategic plan or anything else that may come from the plan? Right.
I think the best practice overall is to look at it from an outcomes perspective, right?
Yeah.
What is it that you're trying to do? Because
Mhm.
if you go looking at, I need a certain kind of server, I need a certain kind of system, it may not fit in the overall vision that you have
Mhm.
for your organization. I know it sounds very academic and theoretical, but that's exactly how you should be going about this. So best practices really is what is real for you, right? We were just on a call that
Yeah.
with a large city in the US that is considering our services, and they didn't know on a 20,000 plus employee base who's using what kind of systems every department and organizations that are somewhat related to them are using. And so the project became, number one, tell us what we have here as a city, and then we can sort of try to find commonalities and cut out the things that are duplicates and go forward with a new strategy. So I hate to use the term, but I have to. It depends on what your reality is.
Yep, absolutely. How would one measure success, right? When you're talking about IT strategic planning, how would they measure success? Does it go by what they're actually implementing from the plan, or what are your thoughts around that?
I think how seriously they're taking the plan
Hmm.
is the biggest success factor, and that's not measurable, right?
Right,
It's sort of a feeling thing where the purpose of doing the plan needs to be clarified up front. And so one of the questions I ask in sales presentations and at kickoff meetings is, why this, why now? Right? Why are you doing
right,
this? Is there an external threat? Is council asking you to do this? Do you, city manager or Mr. Mayor or Miss Mayor, do you really feel the need to do this yourself? And all of that put together gives us the why of the project. And if the why isn't clearly defined, then you know that the project's doomed, because then you have a nice looking report that sits on a shelf for a few years, and people forget about it.
right.
So
So, what's the point? Yeah.
right. So success factor to me, how seriously are you taking it? And when you finish the plan, will you let the experts implement what is recommended, approved, adopted by the council, by the administration? Or are you going to let your IT department say, nah, we don't agree with that, and we're just going to keep building our own things uh, in our organization, or stick with what's worked in the past? They think that's worked in the past. So it's a combination factors that
Hmm.
give me a clear sense of whether an IT strategic plan is successful or not. And many times you don't know until 4 or 5 years after you've done that.
Sure, sure. How do you get buy-in? We talk about this plan, this beautiful plan that could or could not sit on your shelf. How do you get employee buy-in, or department buy-in, or IT buy-in to this plan?
So getting IT buy-in is the toughest part.
Yeah.
Um, by design, they're supposed to be conservative and not let anyone into their domain. Um, when it comes to buy-in, those tend to be the hardest ones, but
Uh-huh.
a lot of our projects come from their bosses, like the mayor's office, the city manager's
Right.
office, and they're mandated to follow through with this. On the user front, the end users that are about to retire, or they have just come into the workforce and into this organization, also tend to be difficult, because the ones that
Hmm.
are retiring, they're like, why are we doing this now? Can you not wait till we retire in 2 months or 2 years? And the newbies have no clue on how government works or what tools to use. They're just getting their heads around why this has to be so difficult and paper based and green
Hmm.
screen based. So there's different levels of of buy-in that we need to get. I think the most important one is at the very top, where the mayor or the city manager has to put their foot down and say, look, I understand all of the reasons why a certain technology was chosen, why we're doing business processes a certain way, but it's time to modernize. And they set the tone for doing it and doing the hard things. And then our team comes in, and it's a constant process to get buy-in from all the different other layers. And
Hmm.
like anything in life, you have to show them what's in it for them, right?
Right.
This is all well and good, the IT strategy, and we're going to modernize, and we're going to have nicer tools for our citizens and our staff. But as a person, what's in it for you for taking part in this very difficult process?
Hmm. Yeah. And on the, I guess the second part to that question, if we have buy-in, how do we manage change? Right. Everyone's job will be affected
Mhm.
by what's implemented from the plan. Right. So how do we manage that change with our employees?
Yeah, it's a long term focus. You
Right.
can't. It's not a reality in the public sector that you can change overnight.
Hmm.
You can change attitudes overnight, but changing infrastructures and changing software and changing processes takes time.
Hmm.
And there are methodologies that companies and organizations use to manage change that tend to be more theoretical. But again, at the end of the day, it's people you're dealing with, and you have to talk to the hearts and minds of those people that
Hmm.
are resistant to change, that don't want to do anything new, that again don't see anything in it for them other than hardship. And at times it comes down to just motivational speeches. Like what are we going to do to improve the lives of those around you that depend on your skill set? So why don't we get the right tools into our hands?
Right.
There's again different layers of change management, and that tends to be the hardest thing. Again, this none of this is an IT project. It tends to
Hmm.
be an organizational strategy project, tends to be a motivational project, it tends to be an HR project, uh,
Hmm.
and very little of an IT strategic planning project is actual technology.
Yeah. So talk about that a little bit more. Why is it not just technology? What are some of the important things that actually come from this? Business process, that sort of thing.
So think about our own lives, right?
Hmm.
We spend so much time looking at cars and houses, and we don't just go buy the first thing that comes along. There's a lot of thinking that goes into it on how it's going to impact our financial health, our lives in general. Um, and that's a similar process for technology modernization.
Hmm.
Again, buying of the house and what kind of windows you want to put in is the easiest thing you would do, right? So
Right.
think of it from that standpoint. When you buy newer infrastructure, when you buy newer technologies, the technology itself is the easy part because it's commodity. It's a bunch of blinking lights. It's the software that's been around for a while. But if you haven't done the hard thinking behind why you want to do this,
Hmm.
it will fall apart. It will. I've seen it fall apart every time that our clients have, or not our clients, have gone ahead and gone out and bought things that don't necessarily fit their organizations because they didn't take the time to understand their business processes, understand the why for how they're doing work today and how that needs to change in the future. Um, and that's why I say it's a 90% non-technical project, and
Hmm.
then the technology itself, you can it's commodity. You can plug and play anything as long as you have the why defined.
Yep, I love that. One of the questions in the comment is how can businesses or organizations ensure that their IT strategic plan aligns with their overall organizational goals and objectives?
I think step one is having organizational goals and objectives. And luckily
Right.
our most of our clients and prospects have well-defined visions and missions, and they know where the city or the county or the organization needs to go as a whole. What they lack is how does technology help them get there, right? So in cases where our clients don't have that well defined, we'll actually help them define that. One of the
Hmm.
first questions we ask as a team is, Mr. Mayor, where do you want this organization to be in 10 years?
Right.
Forget about the technology because it's also intimidating, right? They don't know.
Oh yeah. Oh
Again,
yeah.
these people are insurance salesmen, they're firefighters, they're dentists. They have no idea what goes into modernizing technology.
They don't even like talking to me when I say the letters I and T. So
Yeah,
yes, I completely get that.
right. So also, internally we say we're not an IT company. We're not. There's an
We're
IT
not.
element to this.
Right.
We're in the business of modernizing government organizations overall. So if you don't have your vision defined, if you're just, if you're in office for 20 plus years and this is how it goes, and you're not really defining where you want to be in the next 5 years, an IT strategic plan isn't going to help you. You may not even
Right.
go for it because you
Mhm.
don't know how it fits within your organization. We wouldn't know what kind of strategies to give you and what kind of designs to give you because I don't know where to go. I would be
Yeah.
lost, and we probably shouldn't be taking on those clients
Mhm.
unless they help us define where they want to go
Right.
themselves.
Right. How often should an organization review and update their plan?
No, I would say every 5 years,
Mhm.
um, as long as they've done the hard work in the first 5 years, right? There's nothing
Right.
to do if we give you a report 5 years ago and you come back in 5 years and say do us another one, and you haven't done anything
Right.
with the first one, it puts us in an awkward spot too. Like, were our recommendations wrong? What happened? But there's
Right.
legitimate reasons why clients can also not be in a position to implement. Right, a plan could be
Mhm.
wonderful. We're in a good spot right now because of ARPA funds and governments being sort of flush with cash.
Mhm.
But I remember a time when when recommendations were great, but they didn't have the wherewithal to take the next step into implementation. So it really
Right.
depends on the client. But in general, I would say every 5 years, take a look at where you stand. Of course, with cybersecurity, it's imperative. It's not strategic so much as it is tactical. That you
Right.
take an annual look at where you stand, do your pen tests, make sure you have the right infrastructure, and make sure that you're doing ad hoc testing, and that you're generally aware of what's going on as it relates to cybersecurity. But overall strategy, I would say 5 years or so.
Right. How can leaders within the organization help hold their organization accountable to the plan? Since we're talking about, you need to do the things that it says, and we
hmm
need to review it. How do we, implement accountability to the plan?
I think I think it comes down to individual accountability. Like, when
Yeah.
you create a plan and council adopts it, they're
Yeah.
taking the responsibility as elected officials, and they're saying we approve this, we stamp this, we want to see these things happen. And
Right.
so how can the city manager's office or the IT department not do it? Uh, there's many reasons, incompetence being one of them, where it doesn't happen.
Mhm.
Um, but really, once you have the blessings of the council, there's no reason for you not to, right? So
Right.
we as consultants can hold you accountable if you let us. If we build a review cycle every year where we come in and see where you are, or just let us do it, right? We'll
Mhm.
come in and become your project management arm. You just, come along for the ride. And in 5 years, we'll have all of those implementations done for you. But how do you keep, once you've given them, a client, a report that says, here's your recommendations, here's what you need to do in 3 to 5 years. If they don't do it, I don't think we have the tool sets to keep them accountable.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It has to come from within. They have to do it
It
themselves.
does. Yes. Yes, absolutely. So, what are some of the things? Let's do this. Give our viewers some examples of maybe some clients we've worked with and some of the things, big things or small things, that have come from an IT strategic plan. Like that's what we were called to do. And then
Yeah.
what were some of the things that came out of that
So
plan?
one of our most successful strategic plans has been with the city of Maryville, Tennessee.
Hmm.
And in 2017, we did an ITSP for them. and laid out the plan. And the city manager and the council was very supportive of what we wanted to do. And the biggest thing that came out of it was our whole MacNet project that we've talked about in the past, where the city and the county and the cities within the county are now connected using a fiber optic network that's created standardization, better security, better access to all the schools, public safety, hospitals in the county on a single network that is pretty unheard of. So strategies like that or an ITSP can lead to pretty large projects that have then become revenue generation opportunities for the city and the county.
Right.
The other one that we did for that has been very successful was our project with Blount County, Tennessee. They were
Hmm.
far behind in the 1970s or 80s with their technology, and the first thing we did for them was an IT strategic plan that laid out the 5-year program for the kind of projects they should be doing, how much money it will take, and today they are one of the leading uh, technologically advanced counties in East Tennessee, at least.
Yeah.
Um, so a lot of good things can come out of IT strategic plans that go beyond just the reporting stage, right? And I've
Hmm.
seen on the flip side, so many of our IT strategic plans become bookshelf ornaments that go nowhere because the leadership didn't do it for the right reasons. They
Hmm.
just wanted to I don't know, make the IT director look bad, or they wanted to spend the last 50,000 they had in their budget. Those are the wrong reasons for doing an IT strategic plan.
Sure. If an organization is looking to replace their ERP systems in the next, 2 to 3 years, would it be in their best interest to maybe do an IT strategic plan before going down that path of ERP?
That's a great question. I think so because an ERP is just one component, right?
Hmm. Right.
But it touches everything. You can't just say I'm going to replace my financial system. You have to think about how it impacts something like a school system. How does it
Sure.
impact the police department? How does it impact the utilities department? So as a finance director or an IT director, you can't just say I'm going to go buy a new financial ERP system because the old one sucks. So the best way of finding out where all the tentacles are and what's touching what and what impact one system has on another department that you may not even think about as being related is
Hmm.
the best way of doing that is through an ITSP because that's
Right.
when you really dig into what you have, where your gaps are, where do you want to go, and prioritize projects. One of the biggest things that come out of an ERP planning project is what other systems and departments are related to that system. It's
Right.
not something you can do in a siloed and single-handed manner. It has to be really well thought about and thought of, which is why we struggle with clients that just go out and say, okay, I saw this system at a conference, the neighboring city is using it. I signed the contract. Now come in and implement this for us.
Right.
That puts everyone in a bad spot because more often than not, it hasn't been thought thoroughly through about where do these threads go and who's impacted by the whole system.
Sure. And you may go into it thinking, yeah, we need to replace our ERP system, but it might be number 5 on the priority list, right? You may need to
Right.
do 4 other things before you even think about
Yeah.
this thing
Yeah.
over
It
here.
could be as simple as do you have the bandwidth, right?
Right.
You're asking for a software as a service cloud hosted ERP solution where you haven't even looked at do you have the internet bandwidth to get to the internet.
Right.
And right now you're spending $500,000 on an ERP system, and on go live day, you realize that your 8 megabits up and down DSL circuit or T1 isn't gonna do it.
Right.
So an ITSP is a great spot to start with modernization. And
Yes.
ERP could be the third thing on the list, but at least you know what needs to happen before you get on this path of the ERP modernization. Like our client in upstate New York,
Hmm.
they one of the first things the mayor said to me is, I want my citizens to come in or not come into City Hall, but they should be able to avail of all of those services that we offer. Apply for permits from your home, apply for driver's, license plates, apply for utilities. Why do they need to come into City Hall? And how quickly can we make that happen? So when we started looking into their infrastructure, we realized they needed to spend at least $500,000 on their core IT infrastructure before they could start dreaming about these cool things.
Right.
Um, and once we did that, now we're at a point with them where we can start really thinking about the cool things the mayor's office wants to do. And they couldn't have done that without having us look at a comprehensive way for where they stand, where they sit, where the gaps are, what kind of money needs to be spent, and how much time before they can start doing things that are meaningful to people. And one of our update meetings, it was like, well, phase one is done. And the mayor asked me, what am I going to tell my people on how we spend this money? Because they haven't seen anything. Nothing external facing has been done yet. Right.
Right.
So our answer was, well, phase two really is external facing. We've done everything in phase one to shore up all your infrastructure, to make you secure, to make you uh, advanced enough that you can take advantage of modern ERP systems and client engagement and digital governance. And that's where we're going to go next.
Right. I love that. I love that example. That's a great example. Well, I don't have any other questions unless there's something we didn't touch on in relating to IT strategic planning. But if you guys have any questions, please feel free to reach out. You can reach us on LinkedIn or any of our social media channels. Thank you, AV. It's good to have you back in office. I
Yeah,
appreciate
someone
it
said that
so
I'm back
much.
in action. I don't know who it is.
Yes, I don't
Yeah,
know. It just says LinkedIn user.
yeah, I am back. I've never left action. Actually, I was on the last Zoom call,
Yeah, yeah.
on the last live.
Supposedly, he was a
Yeah,
ghost almost.
I was in and out. But no, I
Right.
think the other point, the parting comment I would make is we got asked some great questions this morning by the
Oh
city
yeah.
in the Northeast, large city, and they asked us tough questions on how we would handle a city with 20,000 employees to find out what they have, or how we would handle um, scope creep and scope changes.
Mhm,
And I want to touch on that a little bit because it was related to an IT master plan, like the first stages of it. They wanted to know where they stood, how what kind of systems they had,
mhm,
and how their organization needs to change. And the question they asked was, how do you modify your approach based on, as you go through the project, you find out that what you proposed isn't going to be enough, or we need a different approach. I think that all comes down to building trust with the sponsorship team and making sure that you're communicating well. And that is also a foundational stone for an effective IT strategic plan, because we need information from our clients. We need to work hand in hand with them because we are coming in blind. We don't know where they've
mhm.
been, why they're in the situation they're in today. So it's a two-way street. We really need to get into this in a partnership mentality and approach uh, for it to be successful. So that's it.
Right.
Parting
Yes.
thoughts.
No, I loved it. I loved it. Thank you guys. You'll catch us next week. It probably won't be on Wednesday though. It will probably be Thursday or Friday, but catch us next week. Join us. We'd love to hear your thoughts, your comments, and thank you all. Bye.
Thanks. Bye.